Good morning. Today is Sunday, August 6, 2023. There is a rule laid down in the Talmud, it's a Gemara Masechta Yevamos, that in shul, in the synagogue, when we are in public, we are joining together in public prayer, we are required, everyone in the congregation is required to follow a single custom. Meaning, there are lots of different areas where different Jews have different customs, and that's fine. Everyone can practice their own customs, legitimate customs. But in public, in a synagogue, everyone should be consistent. And the Talmud says, Lo sasu agudos. You shouldn't allow in a synagogue there to be little cliques and groups. This group is doing it this way, and that person is doing it that way, that person is doing it that way, because it might lead to machlokas, it might lead to arguing. Why are you doing it this way? Why don't you do it that way? And it might lead to arguments, and therefore, lo satsu agudos, everyone has to follow the same custom. Just, for example, in the order of the prayers, in the text of the prayers that are said out loud. It's coming up on Sukkos, where we have a lulav and esrog, we have nanuim, we're waving the lulav and esrog. There are different customs about which order to do it. Everyone in shul should follow, in one shul should follow the same order. There's another example, which is there is a question about whether men should wear tefillin during Chol HaMoed. So during the intermediate days of Sukkos and Pesach, there is a dispute, a difference in customs. Some men do wear tefillin, some men do not wear tefillin. Some men start off with tefillin and take them off in the middle. Okay, different customs. So there too, whatever the custom of the shul is, that's what everybody should follow. If they're coming to that shul, they should follow that custom. Of course, today, the custom in our shul, in ADATH, and in many other shuls today, is that the custom is to do both. That's become the custom, is that everyone does their own thing. Okay, but in general, when there is a single consensus custom of the congregation, one individual should not act differently. This is a limited example of submerging individual choice in order to lead to the harmony of the group. Now, of course, this is a large subject, much larger than for today, but of course, there's got to be a balance. There is a balance in Jewish law and Jewish thought between the right of the individual and the right of the group. Great scholars have discussed this at great length, and it's a very important subject for another time. But in general, there's got to be a balance. Sometimes my own opinion, my own principle, I have to follow that. Sometimes I need to give in and relinquish my own opinion in order to harmonize the entire group. There's got to be a balance, and this is just one example of where the group comes first. There is a powerful source for this rule. It's a verse, it's a pasuk in this week's Torah portion, the Parsha of Re'eh, where the Torah says, Lo sis godadu. Now, the word lo sis godadu, don't sis godadu, sounds like agudos, which means don't make little groups, don't make different cliques in the same place, but it actually means something completely different. The Torah says as follows, Banim atem la'Hashem Elokeichem. God says, you are my children. You are children to God. Lo sis godadu. The word gadida means wound, injury. Don't wound yourself. V'lo sasimu karcha beineinechem lemeis. And don't hurt yourself as a sign of mourning. Person, God forbid, loses a relative. They're very sad. They're grieving. But don't injure yourself. Don't hurt yourself physically as a sign of mourning. There are some cultures where some people do that. You may be familiar with this. But the Torah has a specific command that we're grieving, we're sad, we're emotionally broken, etc. But don't do something that physically hurts yourself. And the Ibn Ezra explains as follows. Achar shetedu. Let's keep in mind the entire passage, how it starts and how it concludes. Achar shetedu shatim banim lashem. Once you understand that you are God's children, God is our parent, our father, our mother, V'hu ohev eschem yoser me'av, and God loves us more than our own father, more than our own mother. L'chein al tisgoderu al kol ma sheyaseh. Therefore, you should not injure yourself because something bad happened to you. Ki kol asher yaseh letovhu, because everything that happens has an ultimate positive purpose, even if we don't see it. V'im lo tivinuhu, and if we do not understand the positive aspect of what happens, kasher lo yavinu habanim haktanim ma'aseh avihem. Just like young children do not understand why their parent does something that they may perceive as very negative. Rak yismechu alav, but children rely on their parents. That's what they're supposed to do. Rely on their parents to do the right thing, even if they don't understand it. Kein tasu gamatem. That is what you should do. So the Ibn Ezra is explaining, a terrible thing happens, a tragedy happens. You should be sad, you should be grieving, and we're discussing, in this other series, the ways to go about that. But don't become hysterical. And don't give in to despair. Because remember that God is our father, our mother loves us more than our father and our mother. Now that's the pasuk, and that's the mitzvah. And now let's go back to this passage in the Talmud. So the passage in the Talmud is interpreting this word in a non-literal way, because the word lo sisgodedu, the phrase lo sisgodedu, means do not wound yourself. Gedida, a wound, an injury. The Talmud is now interpreting this, lo sasu agudos, based on the similarity of the sound, but not the same meaning. It's an interpretation. It's not a translation, it's interpretation. Don't make yourselves into little groups, each one doing their own thing that would destroy the harmony of the group. Let's understand now the connection between the verse and the interpretation. Because when you separate yourselves into little groups and cliques, each one doing their own thing, and risk the harmony of the group, when you separate from the norm of the congregation in a public way, in a way that might cause machlokas, argument, disharmony, you are causing a wound. You are causing an injury. You are forgetting, Banim atem Lashem Elokechem. We are God's children. God does not want us to cause an injury to ourselves. And by acting separately and not respecting the integrity of the group, we are injuring ourselves. We are wounding ourselves. So that Banim atem, the fact that we are God's children and God loves us, means that sometimes, not always, but sometimes, I should not follow my own opinion of what is right. I should be mevater. I should relinquish in order to prevent machlokas, argument. Now, it may be hard to discern when is the right time to relinquish, when is the right time to stand by your opinion, by your principle. Okay, so that can be hard to figure out when to do which one, but it's got to be an objective, reasoned, non-emotional analysis of the situation. Rabbi Yaakov Neuberger added the following. We are specifically reminded of this every year in this week's Torah portion, which always occurs shortly after Tisha B'Av, the day of mourning, the 9th of Av, where we remember how much we suffer because of machlokas. The catastrophes that happened, the destruction of the Second Temple, because of sinas chinam, needless hatred. the suffering that we had then, and let's be honest, that we have now, as a result of needless hatred between Jews, among Jews. And so therefore we have this reminder that it is hurting us, it is slashing us, it's causing us to bleed, to be bruised when we separate into little groups and we are not conscious of the priority of preserving the harmony of the whole. I would just add one more element to this, because this week's Parsha also always occurs at or near the beginning of the summer wedding season. And I would add, at the beginning of this wedding season, very good advice for married couples to remember what we need to be willing to sacrifice for Shalom Bayis, to have harmony within our homes, to be able to respect and love each other. I want to wish Mazal Tov to all the newly married or marrying couples coming up, and certainly to wish Shalom Al Yisroel, peace within and among the Jewish people, because we desperately need it. And the inside of this week's Torah portion should remind us of how much of a priority this must be. My friends, I wish you a great day, and I look forward to seeing you soon in person.